Hey guys, Rodney Walker here. And a big question that comes to me quite often is, Rodney, how did you get started? We see you over here doing all these trainings, helping people. We see you here with the Grant Writers Association. We see you doing all this stuff, but how did you get started? And I want to address that question so that you kind of know how I got into this whole grant writing game and why I love it so. I started doing grant writing a number of years ago. I'm originally from Texas. So again, if you hear any R's or extra S's added to words that don't deserve it, we can blame that on Texas. But being a native of Dallas, Texas, I started writing grants when I eventually moved to Austin. I went there for undergrad, and while I was in undergrad, I was taking classes, and after I graduated, I ended up doing a lot of work in the nonprofit sector. And in the midst of that, one of the organizations that I ended up working for, we had a contracted grant writer. And I was a director at the time, and I was overseeing a department that was connected with youth and education development. So the contracted grant writer came to myself and the other three directors, and she would ask us questions about our programs. And as she was asking us questions about our programs, she would take some notes, write down some information, and then compile that information and put it into an actual grant proposal, and then take it back to a funder, submit it, and then about 2 or 3 months later, she was coming back to us saying, hey, we've gotten funded. And when I tell you, I was blown away with that. I was like, you just took my words and you wrote down something on paper, and then somebody turns around and they give you paper, green paper, they give you money. I was like, wow, I need to learn how to do that myself. So I asked her, I never will forget, I asked her, I said, hey, will you show me how to do this? And it was like, right? If you don't get back over here trying to take my gig, she thought that I was, she might have felt like I was trying to take her gig, her job. And that was the farthest thing from the truth. I was just simply fascinated about the possibilities of learning how to secure additional funds to do even more good. So let's just grab a seat for a second. I wanted to do more good. So I never forget, I asked her, she didn't share any insight with me about how to get this skill, but what I eventually ended up doing was I eventually just dove into the process myself. I said, you know what, I'm just gonna do this on my own. And that's exactly what happened. So I wrote my first grant proposal. I never forget, it was submitted to the Hogg Foundation. And the Hogg Foundation, how do I say this? I submitted that grant, and the Hogg Foundation politely let me know that, in essence, no, we're not going to fund this grant. I didn't realize that grant proposal that I had worked on for about a month and a half, that I was making all kind of errors because I didn't know what I was doing. I was piecemealing my grant proposal. And so that grant proposal was not funded, and it had a lot of mistakes. But let me tell you what happened. There was a senior program officer who was kind enough, when she sent me my letter of rejection, to give me a glimmer of hope at the very end. She wrote at the very end, she said, hey, if you'd like to come in to discuss the problem areas with that proposal, she said that she'd be happy to do so. And I was like, great. I took her up on that offer. And so here's what I did. I got up, I went to meet with her, and I talked to her, and she shared with me the problem areas with that proposal. And let's just put it this way. There were a lot of problems with that proposal. I never ever got funded from them, never. And that meeting, however, was a valuable meeting for me because it put me on the road to getting funded eventually. I eventually moved out to California, where I now reside, and I said, you know what? I still need to learn this grant thing because I felt like if I could get this knowledge, if I could get this insight, then I could help a lot of people. And I was right. I was right about that because at the time I didn't realize how important this was. But here's what happened. I decided, okay, Rodney, you're going to get this knowledge. You're going to learn it. And so this time I decided that, hey, I was going to go to school and learn this information. And so I decided to first take a class, but I decided, you know what, hey, I want to go a little farther than that. There was an MBA program. I decided to get into this MBA program. Got this waterfall over here. It's really pretty cool, you know. But I decided to get in this MBA program, and I decided that I was going to learn how to go about doing this at a very high level. So I started taking classes, and one thing led to the next. I took grant writing classes from the institution that I was getting a degree from, but I also took some classes outside of that. I went to some other very prestigious institutions and got some training there. And then I went to other certificate programs and got training there. And I read everything I could get my hands on. I learned from some of the best in the industry and looked at what they had to say. I read books and dissected them. And I spent, when I tell you, I dove into this process and became a sponge to get as much knowledge about this as I could, because first of all, I wanted to get funded for what I was doing program-wise. But secondly, I knew that if I could learn this at a very high level, that I could help a lot of people. And a part of my goal and a part of my mission is to empower people to be able, what's the word, to really realize their dreams and to make an even more valuable contribution. So that part right there excites me. When I tell you, not only does it excite me, it ignites me. Okay, so that's a part of what my journey looks like. That's a part of what I've experienced. I'll tell you a little bit more. As I continued on this road of learning this skill, I started sharing this information with other people, and they started getting funded. Now, I have to get back up because I get excited when I start talking about this. That's where it became really, really exciting for me, because now, not only am I getting funded for my projects, but I started helping other people to get funded with their projects, and they started making a tremendous difference with the people that they were serving and the people that they were working with. And so you see this whole kind of like rippling effect that kind of takes place. One person's helping one person, and another person's helping another person, and it just started spreading. And before you know it, all of these people are being helped. And so then I had a friend who I helped. His name was Kanoti. He secured $15,000 for his youth group. And as he secured the funding for his youth group, then he eventually goes on and he becomes a professor, and he teaches at this institution, Regis University, and he invites me to come and teach a class over there. And I was like, I'd be honored to. I had never thought about possibly teaching training online, and so I started doing that. And then I started helping a number of people to learn about how to do this at a very high level there. And I never forget, that was like an 8-week type of training I did there. And so my very first training at an institutional level was done at a university, and that was great. So then as I did that, I decided, hey, I'm going to keep on doing this, and I created my very own program that was birthed out of that program that I did for the university. And I spent like another year and a half just working on compiling information, taking the best of what I learned at all of these different places, and from what I learned from my own hands-on experience doing grant writing. And then eventually I started sharing this information in classes, trainings all over the United States. I mean, from Alaska all the way to Hawaii, literally all over. I started helping people, and it was great. And you know, it's still a great feeling to know that there's been an impact from some of the things I've taught, where people have garnered money, and with those monies, they went back and been able to do good to help all of these people. So that's the big picture that eventually led me to taking Grant Central USA and to developing an arm of it, which is the Grant Writers Association, and helping even more people and certifying people and training people and empowering people to get funded. So that's some of my story, and I hope that encourages you wherever you're starting, because we all have to start from someplace. And regardless of where we start, the most important part is that we get started. And when we get started and do so, we'll find that oftentimes that we will be amazed at where it takes us, all the places that you will go, okay? So be brave in all your doings, be bold, and be brilliant. Take charge.